And before we head back into court, let's bring in our guest, National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, a lot to talk about in this case, and there's so much coming out, and I can see both sides. Number one, we all feel for Maya and the pain she was suffering, so that's a separate issue. But the legal issue, is it something that the hospital is responsible for what happened?
I've been saying this since the beginning of this trial, that I don't think they are. I don't believe they are. You know, so what's their motive to harm this family? And so, you know, I came at this and I did a deep analysis with another analyst on this, which, you know, I take medical malpractice cases. And whenever a medical malpractice case comes in, you have to ask yourself, did the hospital, were they reasonable? Did they breach the standard of care or did they not? In my opinion, based on the evidence, based on the testimony, I don't think they did. Nobody in the hospital had a motive to harm this family. The mother committed suicide after 87 days of her daughter being detained. The hospital did exactly what they're supposed to do, and there are thousands upon thousands of instances all around the country every single year where hospitals detain children in this way, but they're right. In this situation, they seem to be wrong, but in my opinion, they were being reasonable. They had a reasonable assumption on the situation, and Michael analyzed it earlier. You know, it looks like a typical case of Munchausen by proxy to an outside observer who's looking at it without the benefit of hindsight. We now have hindsight, so we know it wasn't that way, but I don't believe the hospital is responsible. Just 2 weeks ago, Judge Ashley, I denied a fact pattern just like this that came in my office, so similar, and this, you know, this family's asking for $200 million. I mean, you know, as a former judge, that, you know, when you see something like that, you know that there's something going on that is not really, you know, legal.
All right, Michael.
So just the fact of asking for $200 million is problematic. I'm not disputing that, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
The fact that you're asking for that amount of money, does that mean you're money grubbing at this point? When you did lose a life, you have a child at 10 who is suffering.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like a right number to me.
It's a lot. I mean, and numbers in lawsuits like this are always big. Let's be honest. They're always big.
To send a message to a large corporation like a hospital.
That's what I was going to say. And to a hospital, that's not as much money as it is to one of us.
Absolutely.
So that's the difference too.
All right. Well, the jury was sent out for a few minutes, so both sides could look at documents, etc. Well, jurors are back, so let's get back into court.
Before we get back to court, let's bring in our guest still with us, National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, as we're again listening to this testimony, and you know, the father makes clear, I think, that it really wasn't a lot of his involvement with all of the appointments. He doesn't remember. He has to look at the exhibits. A lot of information. This jury is drinking from the fire hose. Is it too much? Are the plaintiffs saying too much through him?
I do. I believe they are, and I know why they're doing it. So, you know, those attorneys, they're good attorneys. I've heard of them before. I don't know them personally, but I've heard of them before. So here's the problem they're trying to overcome and why this case is so difficult for the plaintiff. They have to overcome the foreseeability issue, right? The amount of money they're asking for is plausible in a punitive damage setting, but to get there, they have to prove, and the plaintiffs are trying to do it right now through every witness they can, that the suicide of the mother after 87 days of separation from her daughter was a foreseeable harm to their negligence. So they're trying to show that the negligence was so clear that they can then get to the issue of foreseeability. Was this a foreseeable harm for the hospital? I don't believe they're going to be able to overcome it. I've been surprised before. I've been wrong before. So I'm really watching curiously to see how the plaintiff's attorney, you know, gears it into that realm where, hey, it could have been foreseeable. The mom had made mention of harm that you're causing to her and the harm causing to her family. So I can see why they're doing it. They've got a trick shot they've got to overcome here.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing, Judge, that's problematic is this idea that she hasn't been painted various times in the most, in the nicest light.
Yes.
There's been some issues raised on cross-examination, very understated cross-examinations, but they're bringing out interesting points. So a lot more to go. All right.